Welcome back to part 2 of using the pungent flavor in foods, which is found primarily in spices and herbs, to preserve and stimulate your Agni-digestive fire. Your Agni-digestive fire is one of the bases, or in fact the basis of health in Ayurveda. One of the bases, but a very fundamental one. Ayurveda and Chinese medicine both, unlike Western medicine, emphasize the role of good digestion as one of the foundations of health. Good digestion, good sleep, good elimination, good mental attitude. Those are the pillars of health in Chinese medicine and Ayurveda. And so Agni is how our body breaks down foodstuffs and converts them into energy. And if you think about how an organism survives, how a mammal survives, how a lizard survives, how a bumblebee survives, but let's stick to mammals, let's stick to humans. We survive by producing energy from oxygen in the air, which we breathe in through our lungs, food, the energy from the food, calories from the food, fundamentally calories from the food. People can survive poorly on a poor diet so long as there's calories. You survive better on a healthy diet. So we survive from oxygen that we convert from the air. So we take in air with all the pollutants, with everything that's in it, but what we're interested in is the oxygen. And our lungs and our heart extract the oxygen from the air. And that's a process of transformation. That's a process of transformation and extraction, which is a function of what we call Pitta in Ayurveda, which is a function of Agni. And we extract energy from food and liquids in calories. And we can't survive without water. We can survive without food for a while. We can survive without water for less period of time. And we can't survive without air at all. For how long can you hold your breath? So this is starting to show you how Ayurveda looks at how a body works. There are fundamental processes that are intrinsic to being alive that have qualities to them. And one of these qualities is extraction, metabolism, breaking things down. That is a different quality than building things up, which is a quality of Kapha, which is why, for example, Kapha dosha types tend to be big and strong and have large flesh and strong bones and large bones, for example. Why Vata dosha types tend to be thin and move quickly and communicate well. So just to give you a sense, I gave you a sense about the Kapha and the flesh. Vata, which is wind and space, but just think about wind. Vata involves the transportation of material through the body. So the transportation of food from here out your body, food and liquids, that downward movement of food is Vata. Vata is involved in all the transportation. And Vata types move quickly, and Vata types are fast, and they speak quickly, and they think quickly. And as I said before, every knife cuts two ways. They tend to get too sped up. They tend to go in all kinds of different directions and lack focus and struggle with focus. So, okay. Now, I left off the previous video, and I was talking about coriander. So spices are all pungent, but they have other flavors as well. For example, the bitter flavor. Turmeric is quite bitter. Actually, most spices have some bitter flavor. There isn't really a spice that if you chew on it, you won't get some bitterness, but some spices and herbs are more bitter than others. a lot of the very heavy medicinal herbs that we use in Ayurveda and Chinese medicine for things like infectious disease are extraordinarily bitter. And the bitter herbs play a role in clearing heat out of the body. So there aren't any culinary herbs that are quite bitter to the extent of medicinal herbs. And in Western herbology, they have these things called bitters, which are used for digestion. Things like gentiana, it comes in a little bottle and you drink it, and they've had to add sugar because it's so bitter. Well, the bitter flavor in spices stimulates bile from the gallbladder, and that helps with digestion. The pungent flavor in the spices contain digestive enzymes and stimulate digestive enzymes as well through their essential oils. And it's the essential oil factor in herbs and spices that gives the aroma. And I want to talk now about sweet, keep coming back to sweet spices. So there are a number of spices in Indian cooking, Ayurvedic medicine, that are sweet. One of which is coriander that I mentioned. And coriander is present in a high percentage of Indian cooking because it's very mild, it's very fragrant, it's mildly sweet, it's really delicious, it pairs really well with a lot of things like onions, like coconut. And every so-called curry powder will have a minimum of three things in it: turmeric, coriander, and cumin. And then, depending on the curry powder, it can have lots of different things. Black pepper is not sweet. Chilies are not sweet. Garlic is almost not sweet. Fenugreek is quite bitter and not sweet. But sweet spices, ginger has a sweetness to it. It's very aromatic. It's very pungent. Ginger, there's an article on my blog about ginger as a panacea. Ginger has, wide health benefits, and it's present in many different cultures. It's all through Asia. Almost every Asian culture uses ginger, from Afghanistan, to Japan. Now I want to talk about a few more. Clove. So clove is quite sweet and very aromatic, but it's also hot. And it's used in Indian cooking. It's used medicinally. It's used in Ayurvedic medicines, and it's also used in some sweets in Indian food, especially in Sri Lanka, where they have a lot of coconut milk, and they'll make desserts like payasam with clove in it, or they might put a little clove in a rice pudding. My two favorite sweet spices, and the sweetest of the sweet spices, first of all, is cinnamon. And there are several kinds of cinnamon. True cinnamon, which comes from Sri Lanka, and I forget if it went from Sri Lanka to Mexico or Mexico to Sri Lanka. I don't remember. I think it went from Sri Lanka to Mexico. Anyway, sorry, that was a tangent that I didn't need to go on. Cinnamon. Sri Lankan cinnamon is called Cinnamomum ceylonicum, and that is the cinnamon that has all the claims about health attributes in terms of diabetes and stuff like that. The Sri Lankan cinnamon is a fragrant, mild cinnamon. In India, and they use it in cooking, and they also use it extensively in desserts. Desserts involving either cow's milk or coconut milk, usually involving some form of rice. And then, of course, they use it in cooking, in creamy curries, especially, because they do a lot of cooking with coconut milk. In India, they use cinnamon in curries like korma, which I've made a video of that's coming next. Curries such as korma, in which they use onion, ginger, garlic, various spices, and then sweet spices like cardamon and cinnamon and clove and fennel with yogurt. And they whip up the yogurt, and so the yogurt provides a creamy sauce that then is really complemented by these aromatic spices. So when you use aromatic spices, like cinnamon and cardamom, it really gives a fragrance, a powerful fragrance that that is part of its function as digestives. There's a lot of different ways that spices act as digestives. A fragrance is one of them. And so in India, they seem to prefer for cooking. They don't use cinnamon in sweets very much. I've not seen that. But in cooking, they tend to prefer rather than actual true cinnamon, they use, what do you call it? They use cassia. And this is what cassia you can get at the Middle Eastern market or the Indian market. Hold on, I'm trying to open this thing. Can you see? No, let me open it. Cassia is related to cinnamon, but it's not true cinnamon. And the bark is quite dark. Hold on, I need to put this down. I just can't get it open. There we go. So cassia is, I don't think you'll be able to see too well, but it's a very dark color. It'll be like light colored. Let me just get one piece. It'll be light colored on that. There we go. It'll be light colored on that side and dark colored on that side. And if you compare that to actual cinnamon, here is some Sri Lankan cinnamon that's true cinnamon. It'll come like this. You see the difference? And it's the cinnamon fragrance is a different fragrance from the cassia, and I don't really know enough about why they prefer the cassia scene to. I remember asking an Indian woman in the market which one to get, and she told me to get. I told her what I was making, and she said to get the cassia. And then I seem to have noticed when I've had Indian cooking that that's what they use. So just to note that. It doesn't mean that you can't use true cinnamon, because in Sri Lanka, where they're essentially making what you'd call, anybody would think of as Indian food, they use the true cinnamon. So cinnamon is very sweet, which is why we like it in the West so much. We use it in all of our pastries and all that kind of thing. My favorite sweet spice is cardamon. Now, there are three kinds of cardamon. And by the way, let me just say this. Cardamon, I call it the cardamon belt. Cardamon is used in Asia. It's used in Asia all the way, actually, East Africa. The Somalis use it. It's used all through the Arab world in both tea and also in cooking things like biryani, which they might have got. They may or may not have gotten the biryani from India through the trade by ship and everything. And then cardamom is, of course, extremely popular from India all through South Asia. For example, it's very present in Malaysian cooking, along with star anise, and usually in curries involving coconut milk. And so I call that the cardamon belt. So there are three kinds of cardamom. This is what you want to know. The kind that I don't see Indians using at all, and I've only seen it sometimes like in Western supermarkets, is white cardamom. It's bleached. I don't know what the deal is with white cardamom who uses it and or why. I think it's the one that they use in baking in Sweden. I know they use cardamom a little bit in Sweden, but Indians use green cardamom. And green cardamom is green cardamom. I don't actually have any in the shell, but you can. What's nice is now you can buy green cardamom. Oh, I can't really do that. Let's pour some out. You can get green cardamom that's already out of the shell, and that saves you all of the trouble of getting it out of the shell. I don't think you'll be able to see too well there. But green cardamom is what's used in Indian spices. Green cardamom is what's used in chai, or actually masala chai. The word chai means tea. So if you order chai in India, you just get tea. If you want the chai with spices, then you get masala chai. And masala chai is actually a really good example of the combination of warming and sweet spices. Masala chai will have it always has ginger. It always has cardamom, those two. It might just have those two. It may or may not then have black pepper, clove, cinnamon, fennel, nutmeg, but the foundation is the ginger and the cardamom. My South Indian friends, they just make it with ginger and cardamom. So the green cardamom is what Indians use in tea. It's what Arabs use in tea. It's what Somalis use in tea. You can also use it in your cooking, and it's especially good in, as I said, curries like korma, where there's something creamy from either yogurt or coconut milk. So in Sri Lanka, they use it a lot in coconut milk curries, along with cinnamon and clove. But of course, the foundation will be the stronger spices like coriander, cumin. Of course, they use a ton of chili. You can make it with black pepper. And one comment, let me interrupt. I'm on cardamom, but I want to interrupt just to say that in Ayurveda, let me just start over. Let's be clear about one thing. Chilies are not indigenous to India. They were brought to India by the Portuguese from Mexico. The history of the use of chilies in Mexico makes a lot of sense because the foundation of their diet, corn, the pre-Columbian diet before the Spanish got there, corn, beans, squashes, flesh foods that they either barbecued or boiled. They don't have a huge array of spices, onion, garlic, they have some herbs. So all of those foods that I mentioned, like corn is considered cooling and sweet. Beans are very bland and astringent. Squashes are also quite bland. So you can see how chilies really match that food. How else would you digest that food being so bland? And they didn't have black pepper. But in Ayurvedic medicine and cooking, we don't, be clear about this, we actually don't recommend chilies at all to anyone. Now, people that grew up eating chilies, like Indians, they're acclimated to it. But chilies overheat, and they overstimulate Agni, and they aggravate Pitta. So even people who are have been raised eating chilies and are used to it, like Mexicans and Indians, I have seen both Mexican and Indian patients overdo chilies and aggravate their Agni. So in Ayurveda, that hot flavor historically was provided in India before the Portuguese came and committed atrocious acts of violence. They also and brought Christianity. They also brought tomato and chilies, bell pepper, and so Ayurvedic cooking doesn't include chilies. Ayurvedic cooking uses black pepper and to some degree white pepper for the hot flavor. Also something called long pepper, which has very medicinal uses and is used in Ayurvedic medicines. And also Ethiopian cooking uses long pepper a lot. Long pepper is less stimulating than black pepper. So just to kind of clarify that, a small tangent. Getting back to cardamom. So there's one other kind of cardamom called black cardamom, which I don't use very often. It's in the family of cardamom. We use it a lot very medicinally in Chinese medicine, in formulas for digestive disorders. And I've noticed that people in North India especially, and maybe in Pakistan as well, they use black cardamom in their biryanis, which is where they cook meat, flesh foods, and rice together with yogurt, and it's quite heavy. They seem to tend to use the black cardamom for some curries more so than the green cardamom, but you can also use the green cardamom in the curries. And the last thing I wanted to say about green cardamom is